15. Explain, order and relate disjointed data, identifies what is relevant and, therefore, points out what is missing in any phenomenon, predicts on the basis of observable facts. Theory is a guide to practice, adds much to what is merely description, clarifies hypothesis, and is a part of philosophy, explains an issue which meets the requirements of both reason and vision. 1.2.2 Political Theory, Implications. Theory implies both science as well as philosophy. It is against this background that one may say that a theorist is both a scientist and a philosopher. A theorist is more than a scientist, he is more than a philosopher. To understand theory when applied to politics would mean understanding politics as a theory, as a science, and also as a philosophy. Bluin would thus explain political theory as an explanation of what politics is all about, a general understanding of the political world, a frame of reference. Without one, we should be unable to recognize an event as political, decide anything about why it happened, judge whether it was good or bad, or decide what was likely to happen next. A theory helps us identify what is happening in a particular case of politics. It helps us to explain why an event occurred and to predict future events. Theory also is a tool for evaluating what is happening and for guiding our political choices. The job of the political theorist is really important. Brecht makes a note of it, saying, "It is the function of the political theorist to see, sooner than others, and to analyze, more profoundly than others, the immediate and the potential problems of the political life of society. To supply the practical politicians, well in advance, with alternative courses of action, the foreseeable consequences of which have been fully thought through, and to supply him not only with brilliant ideas, but with a solid block of knowledge on which to build." When political theory performs its function well, he continues, it is one of the most important weapons in our struggle for the advance of humanity. The discussion on what a theory is or what political theory is would help us identify the characteristic implications or the major aspects of political theory. Some of these can be stated as under I. The area in which political theory works extends to the realms of politics only, political life of the citizen, his political behavior, his political ideas, the government that he seeks to establish, and the tasks expected from such a government. E. The methods which political theory adopts include description, explanation, and investigation of the political phenomenon. E. Though political theory is all about what is political, yet it attempts to understand political in relation to social, economic, psychological, ecological, moral, and the like. IV. The objective which political theory seeks to achieve is to build a good state in a good society, and in the process, create processes, procedures, institutions, and structures historically tested and rationally attained. V. As a body of thought, political theory attempts to explain, evaluate, and predict political phenomena, and in the process builds not only scientifically testable models, but suggests values as rules of human conduct. Why political theory is both prescriptive and explanatory. (16) 1.2.3 Political Theory, Contents. Politics, as a political activity, is usually associated with cynicism and skepticism, demonstrating self-seeking behavior, hypocrisy, and manipulation of attitudes. This negative connotation hardly holds any ground. Political theory is neither a theory of politicking, nor a theory of political intrigues. It is a disciplined investigation of what constitutes the political. Its contents have varied from time to time, from the early Greeks, in the Western political tradition, to the end of the 18th century. Political theory concerned itself mostly with what politics ought to be. Almost during the whole 19th century and the first half of the 20th century, political theory dealt, largely, with the nature and structure of government as a decision-making body. Then came a period when some of the American political scientists, under the influence of scientism, declared the demise of political theory as against those, mostly the British, the Traditionalists, who advocated the value of political theory as a guide to political action. With the fast-changing complexion of the world, political theory has happily survived the onslaughts of the end of ideology and the end of history debates. The concern of political theory, today, has been both the nature and proper ends of the government. Political theory, as a disciplined investigation of political phenomena, is closely related to why and what of the institutions of the government and the whole political system in which the government operates. To study political theory is to study the context in which it exists. We need to understand political theory within the realm of the political system within the realm of the social system within the realm of the period it exists, and in the environment it breathes. The contents of political theory include understanding of what is really political, to link political with what is non-political, and to integrate and coordinate the results of the numerous social sciences for knowing its own nature. Its scope is not limited to what it constitutes, but to what exists in the periphery and beyond. Suggesting that the task of defining what is political is a continual one, Sheldon Wallen, Politics and Vision 1960, includes the following in the contents of political theory. I. A form of activity centering around the quest for competitive advantage between groups, individuals, or societies. E. A form of activity conditioned by the fact that it occurs within a situation of change and relative scarcity. E. A form of activity in which the pursuits of advantage produce consequences of such magnitude that they affect in a significant way the whole society or a substantial portion of it. 1.3 Nature of political theory. To know clearly as to what political theory really is to know its nature. Political theory is said to be political thought, and that is why there are some who describe political theory as denoting the works of numerous thinkers. But it is not what political thought is. There are others who equate political theory with political philosophy. It is true that political theory constitutes a part of political philosophy, but it is only a part can never be a whole, and as a part, it remains only a part of the whole. There are still others who, after incorporating science in politics, prefer to call it political science. But those who insist on a science of politics refuse to admit 17. If there ever had been a history of politics, or a culture of politics, Brecht, therefore, would say, political philosophy, political theory, and political science are no longer interchangeable terms, with the emphasis placed on science and a distinction from political philosophy. Political science now refers to efforts limited by the use of scientific methods, in contrast to political philosophy, which is free to transcend these limits. Likewise, political theory, when opposed to political philosophy, now is usually meant to refer scientific theory only, in distinction from political philosophy. Any speculative thesis that is proposed by political philosophy can be part of scientific political theory only as a working hypothesis, an auxiliary in the scientific kit, and not, or not yet, as a piece of scientific knowledge. Political theory is not all history, but it is history in the limited sense. It is not all philosophy, but it is philosophy in some degree. It is not all science, but it is science in so far as it responds to reason. A political theorist has to be a part historian, a part philosopher, and a part scientist. 1.3.1 Political theory as history. That political theory is history has been emphatically advocated by scholars like George Sabina. But all history is not political theory, just as all political theory is not history. Political theory without history is a structure without a base. In studying and analyzing politics, what we learn to understand is a political tradition and a concrete way of behavior. It is, therefore, proper that the study of politics should essentially be a historical study. History, we should know, is more than the tale of the dead and the buried. It is a storehouse of experience and wisdom, successes and failures, of what has been achieved, and what has been lost. It is the sum total and simultaneously the formation head of a new development, something, as Professor L.S. Rathore Says eternally significant and instructive, inseparably linked with contemporaneity in the perpetual progress of mankind. Ignore history, he warns, and the delight of political theory is never to be retrieved. Political theory as history defies what has lost its value. No one cries now that the state has been a divine creation or the result of a contract in the state of nature. As history, political theory conserves what has significance and helps posterity to cherish it for a long time to come. Concepts such as justice, liberty, equality, obligation, as evolved through the annals of time, are being held high by political theory today and shall continue to be so in future. Indeed, history never repeats, but it can hardly be ignored. In the attempt to divorce itself from history, political theory loses its own significance, for there can be no fruits without roots, as Seeley had said long ago. It is through history that political theory explains what is what. One can never understand a text without its context. Plato's communism was significantly different from what is claimed to be Marx's communism, and one can understand communism of each by understanding the history of their respective times. It is one's age that prompts and propels one's political theory. History shapes and reshapes political theory. How can, then, political theory ignore its one aspect, the historical aspect? Sabina writes that great political theory excels both in an analysis of a present situation and in suggestiveness for other situations. As such, a good political theory, Professor S.P. Verma, Modern Political Theory, 1987, writes, even though it is the outcome of a peculiar set of historical circumstances, has a significance for all times to come. It is exactly this universal character of political theory which makes it respectable. See George H. Sabina, What is Political Theory? Journal of Politics, Vol. I. No. 1, February 1939. Political theory is history in the sense that it seeks to understand the time, the place, and the circumstances in which it evolves. If it ignores its historical context, it loses its strength, its focus, and its message. Any political theory has to have facts as the basis, the factual historical factor.